All right, we are back. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We'll try that one more time. Hello, my name is Daniel Crane, and I am the Programming and Community Engagement Manager here at the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. The Center for Creative Entrepreneurship is bringing the creative economy resources, networking opportunities, and we're really trying to support all of you in helping develop your business and answering questions that you may have. Um, a couple things just to check out for your own sake is cceglobal.org. Each week we kind of aggregate lots of different webinars and programs that you can sign up for free and check out. And this is ranges from all of our 9 sectors, which includes theater, dance, film, visual, graphic design, sports, culinary, and I think that's it. It's a lot. So yeah, go check out cceglobal.org, look on events, and you can check out some of the things that we have going on. But right now, we are very excited to have a 2112 member and a fantastic lawyer, Bill Patterson. Bill is doing a series of webinars for us, which are basically lunch and learns. I would encourage you to check out the one that he did last month. And then we have his closing one at the end of the month, which is going to be about Santa and how the whole genius of marketing around Santa and how he has developed as an icon in kind of the entertainment world. But today we're going to talk about data. You know, the data is such a huge and hot topic right now, and Bill is going to share with us about how to monetize your data, how to use your data to help grow your business, and what are some of the legal issues surrounding that. I think for a lot of people it can be kind of scary and intimidating of how do I tap into this potential resource. So Bill Patterson is going to share that with us. So go ahead, Bill. Thanks.
Thanks, Daniel. So I'm very excited to hear and kind of break down how you need to think about data and why maybe even if you're hesitant at the beginning, if you sit down, have a few conversations with a lawyer, you really can put together a plan that should open up, frankly, a nice secondary stream of revenue for your business. I'm also going to talk a little bit about what it is that, as a content creator, as a person in entertainment, as a person being creative, some of the pitfalls that you should just be aware of generally as well. So without further ado, let's dig in. You should be aware of the regulatory landscape. In the United States, we have a patchwork quilt of laws that regulate your data. If you're involved in healthcare, which I'm really not going to talk about too much today, your major concern is our law is called HIPAA and high tech. If you've ever been to a doctor, you have to sign the waiver when you go in. That's all because of HIPAA. In the entertainment space, in tech sort of at large, the real issue that you have is the Federal Trade Commission. And the Federal Trade Commission really focuses on tech companies and entertainment companies to enforce really 2 different laws. The biggest one is COPPA. And in some ways, COPPA is very simple. And in other ways, COPPA can become more complicated and maybe a little bit more intimidating. But really, if you have a good understanding of it, it shouldn't hinder your business at all. The other thing that you need to be aware of is the FTC will crack down on you if your terms of service or if your privacy policies that you put on your website do not actually match what you do. And that typically comes up, after a data breach and after it's, you've collected all this information, you didn't tell anybody you were collecting that information, you promised you were going to keep it secret, and then a data breach happens and you lose all this stuff, and the FTC comes around and discovers you claimed you had a bunch of security practices and you didn't. We're not going to focus on that so much today. We are going to focus on COPPA. And the reason we're going to focus on COPPA is because we've seen some pretty major fines be handed out under COPPA, especially in the entertainment space. TikTok paid a $5.7 million fine for violations of COPPA. YouTube then came over the top last year and paid a $170 million fine for violations of COPPA. And it's hit other entertainers as well. iDressUp.com, which is a website where you can kind of go and you can virtually play dress up. This targets children. They've been fined as well. So let's talk a little bit about this law and what it's intended to protect. And before I get too far into that, I just want to point out that everything I'm going to talk about in this video is general guidance. It's not legal advice. I don't know anything about your company or your situation. I can't give you any actual advice on how to comply with the law, what you need to do in your situation um, to make sure that you're compliant. So please talk to your lawyer. If you need a lawyer, my contact information is at the end of this. I'd be happy to talk to you and help you adjust your individual situation. But let's talk about what it is that you need to talk about with your lawyer when you have that conversation. COPPA. So this is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And the basic question that COPPA asks is your content targeted towards kids? And the YouTube case is actually a fantastic example of sort of how the law existed for a long time and where the law is today. So YouTube probably has violated COPPA since the day YouTube first hit the internet. And yet it took about 20 years for the FTC to catch up and find them. And they ultimately received a fairly big fine. There's a few reasons for that. One, COPPA has sort of traditionally been thought of as only for websites where you have to that you can access when you're less than 13. And YouTube had in their terms of service that you can only log in, you can only become a member of YouTube if you're over 13. So YouTube thought it was okay. Well, YouTube has one problem with that, and the FTC caught wind of it. YouTube was then running around at all of their trade shows and all their trade conventions and bragging about the fact that they are incredibly popular with 10-year-olds. It's the #1 website for kids 10 and under to come and visit. And if you've got any experience on YouTube, especially if you have kids, you know that it's just littered with content that's targeted towards children. So the FTC caught wind of this, said, no, you're still collecting this data from kids, you can't do it. So let's back up and let's talk a little bit about what COPPA really regulates. COPPA regulates the collection of personal information of anyone 13 and under. And so if you dig in, as I referenced before, websites like YouTube would say, well, if you're 13 or under, just don't access us, and now we're okay. And the FTC has said, no, you know that you have children under 13 accessing your website. You know that you're targeting them. And just because you've made that disclaimer, it's not okay. Well, how do you know? And this is sort of the biggest challenge. Well, the FTC says, we're going to look at the subject matter. We're going to look at the visual content. What kind of music and audio are you using in this creation? What are the age of the models? Are you using celebrities that appeal to kids? And what's the language and the other characteristics of this content that you've created that's really, who's it really targeting? And then things got weird. And if you go on YouTube and you look for YouTube videos about COPPA compliance, there's like 2 or 3 good ones. And then there's a bunch that sort of treat it like the sky is falling, that the FTC is cracking down on YouTube and they were going to destroy YouTube. And the reality is not that is simply not what's happened. The reality is the FTC has looked at YouTube and they've said, no, COPPA still applies here. There's nothing special about it that means COPPA doesn't apply. And unfortunately for content creators, YouTube has looked at it and said, well, if you own you own the channel that you're putting this out on YouTube, then your responsibility is to comply with COPPA, no longer YouTube's. And so now content creators, if you're using YouTube, you need to be aware of if you're creating content that is targeting children. Are you creating content that meets any of these things? Now, it's a little bit complicated. There's basically 3 categories of content, right? You can have content that's just clearly targeted towards children under 13. You can create content that's family friendly, and you can create really, what's kind of purely adult content. And if it's purely adult content, you're probably in good shape with COPPA. If it's going straight after children under 13, it can be a little bit tricky as to what you need to do, and you need to be very aware of your situation. And if it's this broad family-friendly category, you also need to pay attention, but maybe you're going to be okay. We'll talk about that some more. So again, is your content targeted towards kids? Now this right here, if you don't know what this is a screenshot of, I am incredibly jealous of you. For the other 7.2 billion people that have viewed this video online, hi, it's good to see you, and I'm sorry that this song will be stuck in your head for the rest of the day. But this is content that is clearly targeted towards children. We have a model on here. He's clearly under 13. The graphics are all targeted towards children, young children. And the song is a classic camp song, Baby Shark, that children have sung in the United States for a long time. This is a classic example of media targeted towards children. On the flip side, if you've got baking recipes that it's targeted towards, a sophisticated cook at home chef, that's going to be a very different situation. You're probably not going to have this problem. So how does the FTC approach any of this? How do they say, well, some of your viewers may be grown-ups, some of your viewers may be kids. What are we going to do with the mix? So far, and really for the last 20 years, the FTC has always focused on the clear-cut cases. Pinkfong is a clear-cut case. They're seeking out children, they're advertising towards children, and they are creating content that's really targeted just towards the under 13 set. Here's where you start to run into some problems. I've got a son, he's 2 years old, and his favorite set of videos is garbage trucks. Entrepreneurs have gone out, they've taken hours-long video montages of garbage trucks just traveling around, picking up trash and dumping it. And my son will sit there for hours. I don't know too many adults that will sit there for hours watching garbage truck videos. So that's targeted towards children. It is content that is fairly clearly not aimed at an adult audience, and yet it doesn't necessarily have all these markers of colorful visualizations and baby songs and child actors in it. So you really do need to think through what it is you're putting out and who is your audience, which is the other challenge with YouTube, right? You don't have the same access to the analytics that that you might if you were putting this out on your own platform yourself. You don't really know, other than who the commenters are, who your audience is. So you need to be a little bit clever about it. Things that the FTC has indicated that they'll look for is what are the keywords and search terms that your content pops up under. If you've targeted trying to mooch off some of the Baby Shark audience for your content, there's a good chance it's going to be treated as content targeted towards children, because grown-ups don't usually go looking for this video for their own entertainment, pretty much ever. Similarly, if you suddenly have a big marketing campaign and you are doing interviews with all the mommy blogs all over the country to try and get more attention for your content and get more people viewing your content, there's a good chance that that will be treated as content aimed at children, aimed at those under 13. And so you need to think about how you're approaching the market and what you're doing. All of that said, there's really no reason to be afraid of this law. This law is one of those that says, hey, if you're paying attention and you do a few things the right way, God bless you, you're welcome to go collect that data from kids. And so what are those things? Well, first you need to know what data it is that you're collecting. And then, and you're going to hear this from me a few times, you need to make a plan with your lawyer. How are you going to handle that data? How are you going to keep it secure? How are you going to keep it separate from maybe some data that you're collecting for those over 13? And a lot of that can be handled through the terms of service. And the terms of service, as you're familiar with most websites, they exist on the bottom of the page. Sometimes you have to click through and acknowledge that you've read it. Unless you're me, you probably haven't read it, and I only read them because it's my professional obligation. But in that document, it's going to lay out how you're going to handle that data. The trick for entrepreneurs, the trick for startups, is you really need to make sure that that document and what you actually do matches. And the problem's never at the beginning. The problem is always 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line. As your software changes, as your platform changes, you need to kind of constantly be checking in and making sure you're still consistent with what you said you were going to do in your terms of service. And then the last thing you need to think about if you're a startup, if you're an entrepreneur, is privacy by design. And what this means is you need to be thinking about basically from day one, how you're going to construct your platform, how you're going to construct your service so that you keep the information private. Now, let's draw a line real quickly. There's the YouTube world, which I've talked a lot about because it's so important for entrepreneurs. And suddenly, even if you've got your own channel, it's being treated like it's your own website, which you don't really have control over. But you could also just have your own website where you're putting the content out, and you do have control over that. And so it's a lot easier in that situation to make sure you're controlling and you're segregating the data. You absolutely can collect data from individuals under 13 as long as there's a disclaimer and you've worked it out so that you've gotten the parents' permission to collect that data. Now, how you do that can vary. Again, unfortunately, that's a point where I just point you in direction of your lawyer and encourage you to work it out with them what the best way to do it. But it absolutely is doable, and it's not necessarily that burdensome. And then again, if you're willing to jump over those minor hurdles at the beginning, you're going to be able to open up this entire new revenue stream for your company. So it can be very lucrative if you're collecting this data and doing it responsibly. You can make your company more valuable. So let's talk a little bit about privacy by design, because there's a number of other data security laws that are very famous or that are coming down the pike. And all of them, quite frankly, can be handled by entrepreneurs, by tech companies who are thinking about privacy by design, now. And once you start doing that, compliance with these laws actually becomes fairly simple. So there are 7 principles of privacy by design. The first one is you want to be proactive and preventative. Now, what does that mean? Well, being proactive and preventative means that you need to be thinking about design now or in privacy now and not later. You need to think through, what does it mean that my website is going to collect this data? How am I going to secure it? Which of my employees need to have access to people's personal information? How do I keep it segregated from the other employees who simply don't need access to that stuff? The next thing you need to think about is privacy as a default setting. And a lot of people think, well, I'll get to privacy issues, further down the road. Changing your mindset. There's not trade-offs between privacy and security, or privacy and a great platform, or privacy and data collection. It's simply a matter of, I'm going to make sure that we're going to collect the data. It's going to be secure. Most of the way that this data is going to be used may be aggregated so that nobody really knows all the individual details. How you break that up, unfortunately, it's very company dependent on how what it is you need to do here. But again, it's that mindset. We're going to make privacy the default. We're going to protect the data, and we're going to make sure that this is a process that works for everyone. Similarly, you need to be thinking about how you're going to embed privacy in the design of your software. So you're going to collect the software, you're going to collect this personal information. You're going to use this personal information then to do what? What's the purpose of collecting this information? And then how do you make sure that you're limiting what it is that you collect, or limiting what it is that you are using to your actual business needs? And what I talk about with entrepreneurs is often they look at all this and they go, oh, it's too much work. I just don't want to collect anything. Well, you may want to know something because you want to know who's using your business. And you may want to know some more because maybe you want to know what kind of clients are really into the content you're creating. It would be really useful to know that you're not so popular. If you've got music out there and you learn that you're not so popular with the 18 to 24-year-old crowd, but you're very popular with the 25 to 39-year-old crowd, that changes which music venues you want to book. That changes how you want to approach your marketing. So there is value in collecting this information and learning all of this. So thinking through those issues ahead of time can really kind of motivate your business. And that kind of leads into the 4th point. This is really a positive sum calculation. What's the data I want to collect? How does it help my business? How can I help other businesses by selling this data or providing this data to them? What is the connection here? This is all opportunity to make more money. It's not an opportunity or a major issue where, oh, if I touch that, I'm going to get shocked and we're going to lose money. It's going to be a disaster. Like, this is all opportunity. And it's one of the reasons it's attracted so much attention is there's just a ton of money here. And so building out the privacy, figuring out how you're going to do this, it really creates an atmosphere and a second revenue stream that benefits your company. End-to-end security is very important. You know, is our website secure? Are our back-end systems secure? Which of our employees are going to have access to this information? How are we going to keep our employees from just downloading it and walking out the door? How good is the training that our employees have for not giving away passwords to some of some of these software tools to potential hackers? Just think all this through. Next, visibility and transparency. You actually do want to share what it is you're doing and brag about it a little bit, your terms of service. You need to think through what it is that we're doing, what it is that we're offering, and why should the customer feel comfortable giving you that information. And the other important thing that you're going to see with a fair amount of these laws that are coming down the pike is you need to explain why collecting this data is relevant to your business. So again, the visibility is very important. And finally, keep it user-centric. You know, why is this data relevant to my business? Why is you giving me this data going to help you better use our services? You know, be able to explain that, be ready to go. But all of this is stuff that your lawyer and your tech people can work together and really, really help benefit your business and create more value. So let's talk about a couple of the major acts very briefly that may apply to your business, or certainly some of the ones that have the scarier names or scarier information out there. The California Consumer Privacy Act has gotten a lot of publicity. And the reality is for most startups, it just doesn't apply. But you want to be worried about, will it apply in the future? Because you want it to apply. You know, your goal as a company should be to get the California Consumer Privacy Act to apply to you. And once it does apply, you kind of want it to be ready for it. So it's something that you can be thinking about at the beginning. So why doesn't it apply to you? Well, it only applies if any of the following, if your company satisfies any of the following. You have gross revenues greater than $25 million. Most startups do not meet this. If you sell or share for commercial purposes personal information of more than 50,000 California residents. Again, I hope you get there. I hope you get there quickly, but this is not a day one issue for most startups. Conversely, if you're planning on deriving 50% or more of your revenue from selling personal information, then you need to comply with this from day one. That's a little bit of an outlier. It doesn't really apply to creatives typically, because normally what we're looking to do is create something else that's cool. But for data aggregators, people who are looking to deal in personal information and data collection services, you should be aware that that's out there. So how do you deal with the CCPA? Well, make a plan. Start with privacy by design. It really is your ticket to getting all of this started. Work with your lawyer on the terms of service. The CCPA, if you've got good privacy by design and you've got an accurate terms of service, you should be about 90% of the way to compliance already. Related to that privacy by design, you should be aware that you need ability to opt out. Users in California have the ability to say, I want to use your service, but I don't want you to collect my data. To the extent that you can provide that service without collecting that data, then they have a right to opt out of it. Similarly, you should be able to segregate data. One of the increasing trends across the country are laws that say, if I as a consumer notify you that I don't want you to have my data anymore, you have to delete it. So you need a software system in place that says, hey, Bill Patterson doesn't want us to collect his data anymore. We need to delete all the email or all the data we have related to him. And the simpler you make it for yourself, the simpler your business, the less of a problem this will be for your business going forward, right? And California's kind of got a unique provision in there that if I say I want to opt out of data collection, I still have a right to receive all the same services that you can provide without that data. So if I want to opt out of data collection, but I still want Google Maps to work for me, guess what? It doesn't have to work for me the same way. I can still use Google Maps. I can still tell it what my address is, but if it's not going to allow it to do data collection, then it can't just use my my location that my phone is giving it. It'll have to find some other way to do it, and that's okay. Another big issue that I think has scared a lot of content creators, and again can be dealt with. It's, I'm not going to beat around the bush. You're going to have to spend a few legal dollars on it, but you can deal with the GDPR and keep your European clients. So what is the GDPR? Well, it is a regulation, or really a series of regulations, or as they call it in Europe, directives regarding how the privacy and how the data of European citizens must be handled. And there's a couple of key points that you need to worry about, again, if you're a content creator in the United States. The first question is, are you even really targeting Europe? And it's a little bit messy. If you've got a website and it's in English and French and German and Dutch, okay, you're targeting Europe. Do you have a website and you can make purchases in dollars or euros? Okay, now you're targeting Europe. But if you have a general website on the internet and a small portion of your clientele just happen to be logging in from France, do you really need to worry about the GDPR? It depends, which is sort of a tricky answer for this. But the reality is that really hasn't been the focus of enforcement actions to date. So far, the GDPR has really, the regulatory bodies that enforce the GDPR have really focused on what companies that really are just targeting European citizens are very focused on who, how we're going to sell bagels in Paris. All right, that's an issue for GDPR. Regardless, and especially if you hope to grow to Europe or to share your content or your creative skills with Europe, which is a massive market, so you should, there's steps that you can start taking now as a startup that will make sure that you're able to take full advantage of that. Again, privacy by design, spend some time talking about. Make a plan with your lawyer now. Okay, today we're targeting, the United States. When I grow to X, I want to be able to expand to Europe. Are we doing the right things now that's going to be an easy transition for me? Write a good terms of service and get a good terms of service from your lawyer. If you're planning on targeting Europe, there's certain required language that needs to be in there. If you're planning on not targeting Europe right now, there's also language that you can put into your terms of service that'll help you and sort of keep you off the radar. You need to think about data storage, however. If your long-term plans include Europe, you need to start thinking about where it is that you're going to store the data, because if you're trying to move data of Europeans across the Atlantic, your headaches will increase tenfold. So think a little bit about that. And then very similar to California, European citizens are going to have a right to opt out and to the deletion of their data. So again, if you have good design, if you're thinking about these issues from a technical standpoint on day one, you're going to have a much easier time transitioning and becoming compliant with these laws than you will later. So with that, I'm going to encourage you once again. Unfortunately, I can't give you legal advice today, but I do recommend that you find a lawyer that you can talk through some of these issues. The reality with data is that I have a lot of clients that they look at this topic and it scares them and they want to just run away from it and say, we're not collecting anything. And while that seems easy, it's also a good example of leaving money on the table. There are ways to do this economically, efficiently. Your lawyer's not going to chew up so much of the potential profit on this for many companies that it will still make a lot of sense to do. I really encourage you to have that conversation and figure out where you can go with things. So with that, I want to open this up to a little bit of Q&A. If anybody's watching live and they have questions, now's a good time to send them out. Daniel, do we have anything?
Yeah, we have someone was asking about this appears to be about keeping customers' data private instead. So I don't think that's really a question. But Nicole, I will answer that privately to you. I have a couple of questions for you that I think, and if you can stop sharing your screen. One thing that really struck me in the talk was how there's a marriage that I think is really important here with creative entrepreneurs, tech, and legal advice, and kind of how as creators like you said, we want to make things that are cool, right? Like we're making things that are cool, right? But to get into the mindset of how to build out infrastructure that helps you grow your success. I think you really touched on that. Like, here are some of the things you kind of really should think about day one. I mean, somebody who's, making an album, they're not thinking about, oh, what kind of data, how is data going to help me? I know that some websites can tell you, like, from what countries, your music is being listened to. But in terms of what you can actually do with it, I think it's really important for entrepreneurs out there to think about that. Like, hey, you're creating, a visual piece, a piece of clothing, a music, art, whatever it may be. And when and Bill, you were saying, you kind of hinted to, like, suggesting that people kind of focus on their own websites as the best way to collect data.
Yeah. So, there's a couple of things to think through. Who are you and what are you trying to do? And,
Mm-hmm.
I've got a good friend that I think he's got this right. You know, every business is a tech business. Most businesses just don't know it. Even if you're a band, your business is still a tech business once you decide to put your content out on the internet, once you decide to let people stream it. The best way to control it is if you've got your own website. May not be the best way to drive attention to it, though, right? So now you got to start thinking about what the trade-offs are, and keep in mind not just on what the revenue side is on that trade-off, but what's the data collection trade-off there. How much insight do I have? I mean, one of the most frustrating things I think for YouTube content creators, with the recent changes involving COPPA, is YouTube doesn't really give you a tremendous amount of insight about what the age ranges are of your users, of your people. So who is your audience, and you're losing that. So there's ways you can hedge, there's ways you can sort of balance it out, and you need to be thinking about that.
And I liked the Baby Shark reference. I also have a 2-year-old, so I'm one of the 7.2 billion people that know that song. Um, but I think I I I really appreciate this conversation, because I see where this could be very helpful for startups and entrepreneurs. And in terms of, should an entrepreneur or a creative come and talk to a lawyer about, hey, how do I monetize that? Is that a conversation with a lawyer? That is, yeah, that's the question.
It is, and
Mm-hmm.
especially for those of us that are in the entertainment space, a lot of what our actual legal work is helping you monetize what you've created, and how do we do this? And I entrepreneurs come to me all the time, creatives come to me all the
Mm-hmm.
time. They say, "Look, I want to do this. I want to put this out here. I want to license it." And I say, "Well, if we're going to put this out on our own website, or we're going to do this, we're going to do that. What kind of data collection do we want to do?" And the kind of instinctual reaction is, I don't want to do any, because that's a whole different thing and it's scary. And the reality is, it is a whole different thing. It is kind of scary,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never had a client that spent a little bit of money with me to do the data collection the right way, and not have it end up working out sort of in their favor, because the costs of getting that set up to do it the right way, assuming you survive for a little while going forward, are much smaller than the potential revenue streams, and frankly, much smaller than the increased value that you're creating to bring to yourself. So, there's trade-offs, and we shouldn't be afraid of making those trade-offs.
Yeah, I just, the fact that data is such a important, I mean, it's our lives now. We are data. So, and to use it in a way that helps your business grow, but also that's ethical, that covers your basis for, legal issues. I think, this is a really important conversation for entrepreneurs out there. And I would suggest you all to email and call Bill Patterson. Do you want to put your information up one more time so we can check it out?
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
So while he's doing
yeah,
that, good. Go ahead.
no, I was just say, feel free to reach out to me. Email's right there. You can call me 312-321-8445. I'm right here in Chicago. I love just having a conversation with people about how you make, your business better. It's sort of what I do. And, let's chat.
Great. Well, I want to thank everyone who jumped in and watched this. Again, my name is Daniel Crane. I am the Programming and Community Engagement Manager here at the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, which lives out of 2112. We are here aggregating resources, building networks, and really working on a framework for the creative economy. So, Bill talked about, like, we all have to kind of look at different things as we're building our business, and CCE is really focused on, especially is focused on the creative economy and ways to help you build your business. The last thing that I will say is that we have our big first fundraiser happening in December. It is 9 days of giving, streamathon, empower, educate, and create. So we're going to have 9 days. We're going to be talking with industry people for 8 days. With all the programming will be free, and then the ninth day is going to be a ticketed event. We suggest everyone just to come check it out. It's going to be on Facebook Live, YouTube Live. Check out our website, ccglobal.org, for more information. We hope you all have a wonderful day, and then we please come next month and check out Bill Patterson's talk on Santa, which I think is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So thanks a lot, Bill.
If you're looking for a broader topic than just data, come back for Santa Claus. That man does everything but data.
Awesome. All right, Bill, have a great day. Everyone, great day, everyone. Take care. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.